Al-Ja'fari says some states approach the situation in Syria in a misleading way in service of terrorism and extremism. Lavrov said that Geneva II priority should be to combat terrorism, and the Syrian government and opposition should combine efforts to eliminate the terrorists. Five people are killed and 46 injured in a terrorist blast in a Hreik neighborhood in Beirut's southern suburbs. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Irado Krikorian with the news in English. Reading out Syria's statement at the UN Security Council during a session to discuss the item entitled The Situation in the Middle East, Syria's permanent representative to the UN, Dr. Bashar al-Ja'fari, said the delegations of some states deliberately referred in their statements to the situation in Syria to distract attention from the essential topic of discussion, namely ways and means to end Israeli occupation of the Arab lands. These delegations, Dr. al-Ja'fari added, referred to terrorism on the eastern side of the Syrian borders, namely in Iraq, disregarding the terrorism in Syria. Al-Ja'fari talked about the concern of the British, French and other Western countries' foreign ministers, as well as the director of the American FBI, over the return to those countries of those terrorist nationals who have been shedding blood in Syria. Al-Ja'fari said Turkish trucks sent by the Turkish government, which were supposed to carry humanitarian assistance to Syria, were stopped by the Turkish police by accident inside Turkish territories, and they proved to be carrying weapons, not medicines, children's food or blankets. Al-Ja'fari pointed out that the same delegations ignored what Palestinian Labour Minister Ahmed Majdalani had said in Damascus a few days ago, namely that it was the terrorists who had opened fire at the UNRWA-organized convoy of humanitarian assistance when it was trying to enter Al-Yarmouk camp. Al-Ja'fari said that the subject in question, which was supposed to be discussed at the UN Security Council session, was the Palestinian issue and an end to Israeli occupation of the Arab lands. If some Arabs have done what pleases Israel, I won't do the same. Syria's permanent representative to the UN said Syrian citizens under Israeli occupation in the Golan wouldn't be treated in Israeli hospitals and wouldn't be allowed to study in Arabic in schools according to the Syrian education curricula if they refused to carry Israeli identity cards. Al-Ja'fari stressed that if the UN wishes to maintain its credibility, then some known states should end their double standard policy and associate words with deeds. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has affirmed in a press conference he held in Moscow today that the important thing in the crisis in Syria is the increasing danger of terrorism and extremism, and that priority should be given during the Geneva II conference to the ways to combat them. He stressed that the Syrians should determine their own future without any foreign intervention.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has reiterated emphasis on the need for the results of the upcoming Geneva II conference to lead to the unification of the efforts between the Syrian state and the opposition in order to eliminate Al-Qaeda-linked armed terrorist gangs. In his annual press conference, Lavrov said the Russian-American initiative stipulates the beginning of dialogue among Syrian parties in the interest of the full implementation of the Geneva I statement, which did not call for changing the regime. In reply to a question on the possibility of unifying the efforts of the Syrian Arab Army and the so-called Free Army to combat Daesh on the Islamic Front, Lavrov said the Free Army, Jabhat al-Nusra and Daesh all embraced the same thought and carried out the same acts. The Russian Foreign Minister said withdrawing the invitation addressed to Iran to take part in Geneva II was a mistake and an obstacle in the way of unifying the Islamic world in its war on terrorism.
In turn, Russian Foreign Ministry asserted that the decision of UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon to withdraw Iran's invitation to attend Geneva II conference has disappointed Moscow because such a step would weaken the international efforts to resolve the crisis in Syria. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Jawad Zarif has expressed regret over the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's withdrawal of the invitation he had addressed to Iran to take part in the International Conference on Syria following pressures exercised on him. Zarif said such conduct does not benefit the UN Secretary General. The Iranian Faris news agency today quoted Zarif, who is currently visiting Turkmenistan, as saying that Ban Ki-moon had contacted him several times last week and that he frankly told him that Iran refused any preconditions for taking part in the conference. Iran had earlier declared its rejection of any preconditions to attend the International Conference on Syria, which is due to be held in the Swiss city of Monroe tomorrow Wednesday, with an international and regional participation on a wide scale. Iran's Assistant Foreign Minister for Arab and African Affairs, Hossein Amir Abdullahian, said that his country will not participate in Geneva II conference scheduled to be held tomorrow because the Americans insisted on putting preconditions. Abdullahian said that the U.S. is illogically insisting on imposing preconditions on issues that must be resolved by the Syrian people only, according to the international law and democratic principles. Abdullahian added that Iran hasn't participated in Geneva I conference and it hasn't played any role in issuing its communiqué, so Iran doesn't insist on participating in Geneva II. Abdullahian reiterated the need to find a political solution to the crisis in Syria. Welcome back. In Daraya city in Damascus countryside, units of the Syrian Arab Armed Forces have found a huge quantity of arms and ammunition inside a store used by the terrorists. Among the seized weapons are RPG launchers, machine guns, rifles, explosive devices, 50mm mortar shell rockets, Israeli-made grenades and binoculars. For the fourth day in a row, the operation of delivering humanitarian assistance continued to Al Yarmouk Palestinian refugee camp in Damascus, evacuating the patients from it. In Idlib countryside,
residents of the camp recounted that the prices of food soared as the armed groups exploited the civilians, showing no mercy even for children. One child was denied even a piece of bread. Next day he died of hunger. The armed terrorist groups have prevented the access of food into the besieged civilians in Al Yarmouk. Some residents who were in very bad conditions were allowed to go out of the camp yesterday. They recounted the tragedy of children and people who were languishing under the siege by the armed groups. Meanwhile, about 600 boxes, including 18 tons of food and humanitarian assistance, have been delivered into the camp, hoping to respond to the initiative by the National Reconciliation Commission, supported by the Syrian government, to put an end to the suffering of the besieged in the camp.
In Idlib countryside, units of the Syrian Arab Armed Forces have eliminated all members of an armed terrorist group, some of whom are Turkish, Chechens and Egyptians, and destroyed 2 cars equipped with heavy machine guns in Nabi Ayyub area. In Aleppo, units of the Syrian Arab Armed Forces have killed a number of terrorists and destroyed their vehicles in Haylan, Blat, Salah al-Din, Bustan al-Qasr, Babis, Yaqd al-Adas, Zaid, Der Jamal and Der Hafir al-Sharqi. Other units of the Syrian Arab Armed Forces have foiled an attempt by an armed terrorist group to infiltrate to Mahallet al-Sayyid al-Ali and killed some of its members. Other units of the Syrian Arab Armed Forces have targeted terrorist gatherings and killed a number of them. South al-Ma'mal al-Turki, al-Bayk Farm, the vicinity of Talayat al-Mushat, Rasm al-Abboud, the Central Prison, Hreitan and al-Wudayhi. In Homs, units of the Syrian Arab Armed Forces have killed members of an armed terrorist group in Al-Ghasibiyya village in Ad-Dar al-Kabira, who were firing rockets on the neighboring villages. Units of the Syrian Arab Armed Forces have thwarted an attempt made by terrorist groups to infiltrate towards Al-Abudiyya Talhanash axis in Al-Qasr southern countryside, killing or injuring a number of them and destroying a 106mm cannon and 4-wheel vehicles. Other units of the Syrian Arab Armed Forces inflicted heavy losses on terrorists in Salam Gharbi, Salam Sharqi, Al-Shandakhiya, Rish, Mas'ada and Rahum villages, killing or injuring most of them. 4 people were killed, including women, and 46 injured in the terrorist blast that took place in Harit Hareik in Beirut's southern suburbs. The Lebanese Al Manar TV station said the blast took place in Martyr Ahmad Qasir Street, where the latest terrorist blast took place on the 2nd of this month, adding that the blast caused heavy material damages. Members of civil defense were trying to save those who remained inside the houses close to the site of the blast. The Lebanese National Agency said that a booby-trapped vehicle in Shari al-Arid in Hareik neighborhood exploded, adding that it took place only 70 meters far from the site of the latest blast. Finally, in our local news, a few days ago, the Syrian Gari channel was inaugurated in the city of Latakia. A set of programs have been kicked off tackling various political, social and artistic topics. It is a land channel that initially covers the Syrian coastal and internal arenas.
A new Syrian channel is born from the womb of challenge, from the soul of determination to continue and succeed. Name, Ogaret Channel. Place, Latakia. Purpose, to enhance the Syrian media developing. After nearly 3 weeks of channel setting out, the results of hard work have appeared through many programs which are involved in several issues. Ogaret is launched and the new hope rises. Syria faces the cruel war with hard work, creativity and construction. All the best wishes for the Syrian media.
For the English news, Syrian channel, Latakia, Ranim al-Basha.
With this, we end our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details about Syria and the region and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. Now to latest business and market news with Nariman Qassam, but after a short break.